All right, a little after 10, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the Helping Justice Involved Reenter Employment application webinar. Um, we are going to go over some of the specifics of the H.I.R.E grant opportunity. Julissa, if you could click over the next slide, we'll go over our agenda for this morning. So as you can see here, we'll do some welcome and introductions of the California Workforce Development Board team here, move into some background on the program, go over detail of the grant initiative itself. We'll provide some background on how to apply for the grant, provide a little information on the process that we will follow for awarding the grant, and then cover some resources and open it up to questions at the end of this morning's call. So let's go ahead and get started with introducing the team. I'll go first. My name is Mike Rosetta. I am manager over the Grant Development Selections and Agreements Unit at the State Board. I will turn it to my colleague, Cheney Patterson.
Good morning, everyone. Cheney Patterson, Grant Development and Selections Manager under Mike's unit, and I will turn it over to Monique Cardona.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Monique Cardona. I am a Grant Development and Selections Analyst, again with Mike and Cheney's team. Good morning, and I'm going to pass it over to Joe Flores.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Joe Flores. I am part of the field team for the suite of reentry programming we have here at the California Workforce Development Board. I'm going to popcorn it over to Sandra.
Good morning, I'm Sandy Nieves, and I am the program manager over our reentry suite of programs, which includes P2E and H.I.R.E, and I will send it over to Angela.
Good morning, my name is Angela Mendiblis, and I'm a branch manager over the program implementation branch with the CWDB, and then I'm going to pass it over to Amina.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amina Nasric-Belovich. I'm with the Employment Training Panel. I am an admin with the Cali Grant System over at ACP.
And then Julissa, I don't think we got your intro. Go ahead, Julissa.
Hi, I'm Julissa Silva. I am part of Mike and Cheney's team in the Grants Development and Selections, and I'm also a grants. And I'm so happy that you guys are all here.
Yes, and again, welcome everyone. We'll get into our next slide here and provide a little bit of background on CWDB's history of reentry initiatives that led into our H.I.R.E grant. And for that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Joe.
Thanks, Mike. Like I said, my name is Joe, and I help oversee the policy and field team for the reentry programming we have here at the California Workforce Development Board. And we're so excited that H.I.R.E is going to be part of this umbrella of services that we have here at the State Workforce Board. And as you can see here, this is a reflection of previous initiatives that we have overseen here at the State Board, starting with our Corrections Workforce Partnership going back about 5-6 years now, where we partnered with our state agency partners like CDCR, Cal PIA, GovOps, all relevant state agencies, where we fundamentally came together and say, hey, how are we going to serve the formerly incarcerated that are still in prison, ready to return home in a more formalized, intentional, systematic way. And then in our partnership building at state agency level, we also have done some proof of concept of direct civil service hire, just to see how we can directly connect folks into good paying union represented type jobs. So it's building off of that, the state partnership. Then we received from the state legislature, at least in the first round, of prison to employment state grant funding to workforce boards of at least over $37 million in our first round. And there was when we actually put the proof of the pudding of actually building the infrastructure of receiving folks from the state prison systems directly into our workforce boards and partners, and some CBOs and some nonprofits out in the field. In a round two, we've done an additional 20 million out into the field. And we've seen some great data emerge. What happens if you just give some supportive services out into the field to this population that's tends to be the hardest to serve. And we've seen some great emerging data. It's like, hey, guess what? When you actually provide some direct services, you're going to see some great outcomes. And so we're fortunate that we're seeing some data emerge in the first round. We're getting some great data into the second round. And what we are doing here collectively across the state of California and building these wins and these partnerships and this intentionality in serving the field, our agency applied for a federal grant. And the federal grant basically awarded us a grant. And then they say, hey, what you all are doing in California, can you be our technical advisors? And can we help serve the federally incarcerated as they too return home from federal facilities? Hey, how can we give them some certificates? How can we create partnerships while they're still on the inside and as they're released all across the United States? So what we're doing here in California has now becoming a national model to follow. So we're very excited about that. And here we are with H.I.R.E. It's about a year ago this week, where we first learned that $50 million was going to come to the state board to help directly the CBOs in this reentry work. We were the agency that was going to be tasked in creating this initiative. And now fast forward about a year after the May revise and the state budget implementation in July, here we are today with a nice initiative. So and then we're also excited that we're more intentionally bringing in our CBO and nonprofit partners in this reentry work. So as you can see, it's just these programs have now built on top of each other, because at the end of the day, the end goal is to help out the formerly incarcerated, justice impacted individuals. And what we're doing here in the state of California is the national model. So everything that we're doing going forward, and we're looking forward to this initiative, is gonna stream up all the way to many stakeholders, many folks being served out in the field. So I'll stop there. Mike, I'm gonna pass it back to you. Thank you for giving me some space to set today's table. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And then Julissa, go ahead to the next slide here. We'll get into some of the background specifically to H.I.R.E. So as Joe laid out, we at the board have been working in this reentry space for the better part of the last decade. And we're really excited now to bring a grant opportunity that's specifically targeted to community-based organizations and nonprofits. So as Joe mentioned, this funding for the H.I.R.E. program came to us through the 22-23 budget. AB 178 for those who are interested in looking at the actual statute. And AB 178 allotted approximately $50 million to the California Workforce Development Board to award grants to CBOs and other nonprofit organizations that specialize in serving the reentry population. So the overarching goals of this program are to increase employment and job mobility for justice-involved individuals, as well as provide training, reskilling, upskilling, and supportive services. So again, this grant is aimed towards community-based organizations and other nonprofits. We'll get into eligible applicants and all the details later on in this morning's presentation. But specifically, we're looking to award grants to CBOs that have relationships with employers that hire individuals with a criminal record, as well as CBOs that have a history of developing workforce training programs that integrate feedback from folks from the justice involved and reentry population. And we want to talk a little bit more about how we kind of developed some of the policies of H.I.R.E. and how we integrated some feedback from stakeholders. So for that, I will kick it over to my colleague, Sandy.
Thanks, Mike. So yeah, we had an opportunity to be pretty innovative with how we developed the H.I.R.E. grant. And so we actually invited stakeholders to meet with us and share with us, best practices with serving the reentry population. So we had an opportunity to meet with former grantees from P2E, other CBOs that serve reentry population, nonprofits, and we also met with workforce development boards to get their input also. Next slide, Julissa. Thank you. So part of the stakeholder engagement was meeting with CBOs. We had a number of meetings last year to kind of get their feedback about what was important to them, how this grant should be able to serve that population. We had meetings with the workforce board, as I said earlier. We also did some unique stuff, and many of you were at these sessions, actually. We had 2 networking sessions where we had people come and meet each other to connect, because as you'll see later on in this presentation, where we talk about the hub and spoke model for how we're going to do this grant, people will have different roles in how they apply for this. We developed a prospective applicant survey and database so that we could get information from the field about what role they would like to play in this and what their specialty was. We also held a couple of mixers, and we divided those by regions, and we did it with Northern California and Southern California. Hugely successful. We got a lot of interesting feedback. People had a chance to connect and meet, and it was a lot of fun, actually. And most of you were there, so thank you for participating in that. It's great to see you again. I will now kick this over to Monique or Cheney.
I'll pick it up.
Thanks, Monique.
So as we mentioned before, this funding will go to community-based organizations and other nonprofits that specialize in serving California's reentry population. Those applying must demonstrate both relationships with employers that hire individuals with a criminal record and a history of developing training programs with feedback from the reentry population. To be considered for hire, all applicants except those applying for technical assistance must include partnership agreements between 1 or more local government entities and 1 or more local workforce development boards. You can go ahead and kick it off to the next slide, Julissa. So this slide lists some examples of eligible CBOs. Examples of eligible CBOs include those, but is not limited to those that are culturally based, labor-based. They can be transitional housing providers, worker centers. Eligible local government entities include, but are not limited to, probation offices, public school districts, housing service agencies, courts. Yeah. And now I'm going to, you can kick it to the next slide, Julissa. So this slide lists all of the organizational requirements for applicants who will be applying for funds. CWDB may conduct periodic reviews or request information from awarded projects as needed throughout the grant term. So this is just basic information. Your CBO must be in good standing, must have an active status, the Secretary of State, and physical address in California. All this information can be found in our RFA as well. Required partners. So this has been mentioned already. All applicants except those applying for technical assistance must include partnership agreements between 1 or more local government entities and 1 or more local workforce development boards. We've already listed some examples of what those can be. Organizations, we're going to talk a little bit more about the network model, but just to keep in mind, organizations applying as a spoke within a network are not required to submit partnership agreements, provided their hub submits partnership agreements with the required partners in the same geographic area as the spoke's proposed service delivery area, which is a mouthful, but we'll hopefully elaborate on that and give some more background and details into what we mean in a little bit later. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mike, who I think is going to dive deeper into higher project types.
Thanks, Monique. So Monique previewed this a little bit, but H.I.R.E will have 4 different types of applications, so multiple ways of applying for the grant. We'll start with independent projects, and these are going to be more traditional grant applications where a single entity is applying, filling out an application. They will provide all the services and partner with the required local government and local workforce development partner. Technical assistance provider, that's a little bit different. They will not be providing direct services, and we'll provide a little more detail on that. They will be more of a statewide convener that will serve as the entity that organizes all of the H.I.R.E grantees, establishes a community of practice, and just sort of works with the grantees to share best practices and kind of just keep a pulse on what's going on in the field and make sure there's connectivity among all of our H.I.R.E grantees. The H.I.R.E network is sort of our new innovation for this program, and we'll dive deeper into what that means. It's a little more complex than a standard grant application, but we're really excited about this model. We think it's going to bring an opportunity for smaller grassroots organizations to access state funding in a way that traditionally they're not able to do. And a H.I.R.E network is comprised of two different types of applications, a network hub and a network spoke. And we'll get into more detail on that in the next few slides here. So this slide here provides sort of a snapshot of all of the different types of applications and really provides a visual overview of the hub and spoke model. So you can see here a hub and spoke model or a H.I.R.E network. We're going to use those terms interchangeably throughout this presentation. But a H.I.R.E network will consist of a single entity that acts as the lead applicant, and there will be our contact from us at the state. We will work directly with the hub organization. The hub will work with several partner organizations that apply along with the hub as a package of applications. We'll get into sizes of CBOs, how the spokes can connect to the hub and all of that, but really just want to highlight that this new model will be comprised of multiple organizations applying together under one umbrella as a network that will be comprised of the same required partners, and all submitted under a single application package. And then again, you could see in the lower right-hand corner, the independent applicants will just sort of be applying as one-off entities, which will also act as lead fiscal agent and submit an application package without some of the network components that we'll discuss later. So one of the big things we wanted to call out early on in this morning's presentation is the classification of organizations by size. This will determine the maximum award amount for grantees. So we're defining large and small CBOs with the threshold being $1.5 million in annual budget. So a large CBO is an organization that has an annual budget greater than $1.5 million. And a small CBO is an organization with an annual budget less than 1.5 million. And we'll explain a little more how this will work in the context of the grant in the next few slides here. So for independent applications, and again, these are organizations that are just submitting an application kind of by themselves, they'll still be required to apply, form partnerships with a local workforce board and local government entity. And the large CBOs that apply independently will be eligible for an award up to $750,000, while smaller CBOs applying independently will be eligible for an award up to $250,000. Diving a little more deeply into H.I.R.E networks. So again, a H.I.R.E network will be a collaborative group of organizations applying under one application. A H.I.R.E network will consist of one large CBO that acts as the hub and one or more large or small CBOs that will function as partner organizations, but we are referring to those as spokes. H.I.R.E network sizes will be determined by the hub's annual operating budget. So larger organizations with higher annual operating budgets will be able to take on more partners or spokes, and smaller CBOs will have a lower cap for how many spokes they can take on as part of their application. There's some incentives that we've baked in for spokes and hubs to form these network partnerships, and we'll cover that in the next couple slides. So under the H.I.R.E network model, Organizations applying as part of the hub and spoke model will be expected to work together collectively throughout the grant term to serve the reentry community. Local boards and other agencies are expected to operate in a collaborative relationship to recruit and support participants, conduct needs assessments of participants, and provide direct supportive service and disperse needs-related payment to participants. Networks may be aligned geographically, or they may be aligned via some other factor like an industry focus, a specific subsection of the reentry population. But we want to provide some flexibility for how these network partnerships are formed. We really want to encourage folks out in the field to find partners, work with organizations that they are already working with, and come in together as a collective under the network model. And in the next couple slides here, I'm going to just kind of cover a few examples of what a network model will look like. So again, the hub and spoke model, the number of spokes that a hub could take on will be contingent on the size of the hub's annual operating budget. So right here we have a smaller hub, so that'll be an organization with an annual operating budget between 1.5 and 4 million. That size hub will be able to take on up to 3 spokes. And again, those spokes can be either large or small CBOs. It could be any mix. It could be all large, it could be all small, or it could be a mix of both. And again, the workforce board and local government partnerships are a requirement for all networks, as well as independent applications. And as Monique mentioned earlier, networks that are operating by geography. So for example, a network operating in Sacramento, if a hub is based in Sacramento and forms a partnership with a local government entity and a local workforce board that covers the full geographic scope of their spokes, the spokes will not be required to form their own partnership agreements. They'll be able to operate under the partnership agreements with those entities that their hub has created. This slide shows kind of the mid-sized hub model. So a hub with an annual operating budget between 4 million and 10 million will be eligible to take on up to 6 spoke applicants. And again, these networks will be submitting a single application package. However, the spoke organizations will also be completing an application, and then that application will attach to the hub's application through our Cal eGrants portal. And we'll explain the mechanics of how that's going to work later on in this morning's presentation. But just know that everyone's going to be filling out an online application, but the full package of applications will be submitted under the umbrella of the full network. And then finally, we have our largest size network. So this will be for hub organizations that have an annual operating budget of at least 10 million. These organizations will be able to take on up to 9 spoke organizations. And I'm going to pass it back to Monique, who's going to speak in a little more detail about the responsibilities of the hub organizations in our network model. Take it away, Monique.
Thanks, Mike. So just as a reminder, organizations applying to serve as a hub must have an annual operating budget greater than 1.5 million in fiscal year 2022 and demonstrate organizational capacity to serve the reentry population. As Mike mentioned before, hubs will be serving as the primary point of contact for the CWDB and are responsible for organizing, coordinating, and reporting on project activities, deliverables, and program metrics on behalf of their proposed network. So we're talking paperwork, we're talking a lot of phone calls and all the meetings. So the CWDB expects hub applicants to have experience managing state and/or federally funded grants, the capacity to organize and coordinate project teams comprised of representatives from partner organizations. And in a moment, we're also going to be talking about incentives for both hubs and spokes. So Lisa, I think you can kick it to the next slide. Hubs. So hubs may request up to $750,000 for their own H.I.R.E program activities and up to an additional 10% of the collective amount of awarded funding to their network spokes. I'll say that again. Hubs may request up to $750,000 for their own H.I.R.E program activities and up to an additional 10% of the collective amount of awarded funding to their network spokes. We'll also be talking about, that was just an incentive for the hub, so we're going to be talking about some incentives for spokes now. So as a reminder, spokes are community and/or nonprofit organizations that are going to be applying within the network via a single application. They'll work with hubs to complete their reporting requirements. Small CBOs applying as a spoke may request up to $350,000 to complete their proposed grant activities, whereas large CBOs applying as a spoke may request up to $750,000 to complete their grant activities. You can go on to the next slide, Julissa. Oh, so this is, we're on the incentive piece. So small CBOs may request up to $350,000 for program activities and are eligible for a 20% advance payment. Large CBOs may request up to $750,000. Spokes will also leverage the administrative capacity of their network hubs. So as we mentioned before, hubs will be doing majority of the reporting to CWDB. So we wanted to build in some incentives within the network. And with that, I think I will pass it on to Angela to talk a little bit more about these advance payments.
Thank you, Monique. Good morning. So for all CBOs, with spokes, as far as spokes and independents, they will be able to receive up to 20% advance payment. So at the time of execution of their contract, they'll be able to submit an invoice for that 20% and receive that funding at the very beginning of the grant program. And then now I will pass it on to Cheney.
Thank you, Angela. So as it was mentioned earlier, technical assistance, those applying are eligible to apply for up to $500,000 to aid in the continued development and implementation of awarded projects. Grantees will provide a forum for cross-project communication, peer-to-peer learning, supporting project-specific outcomes and broad H.I.R.E goals. TA applicants will complete a separate application, which will be reviewed and awarded on the same timeline as the H.I.R.E program applications. TAs will play a key role under 4 categories, and that's 1 is expertise and capacity building, 2 is regional collaboration or coordination, 3 is knowledge sharing and networking via communities of practice, and 4 is development of materials and media. And I will jump it over to Monique for allowable uses.
So H.I.R.E funding can be used for pre-apprenticeships, apprenticeships, training, customized training, incumbent worker training, and on-the-job training with the reentry population. Funds can be used for wage and stipends for trainees, program participation stipends, and needs-related payments to support individuals' reentry and subsequent job search. They can also be used for job readiness and what are called bridge activities, which are activities that lead to enrollment and the completion of training programs for the reentry population, such as obtaining housing and or a driver's license, things that will lead to employment. You can hop to the next slide. So eligible participants. So grant funds will support activities for California's reentry population. For the purposes of this grant, the reentry population includes individuals who were previously incarcerated in a local juvenile or adult correctional facility, previously incarcerated in a state or juvenile adult correctional facility, and justice-involved individuals. And I believe I'm gonna pass it over to Mike to talk about milestones and outcomes.
Thanks, Monique. So another one of our innovations under the H.I.R.E initiative is the collection of participant milestones and outcomes. And this was an idea that came to us through the stakeholder engagement process that dates back to last fall. And what we want to do through the participant milestone process is provide a little more detail on some of the advancements that participants are making as part of their participation in the H.I.R.E program. So this will include things like traditional workforce outcome metrics, like did a participant complete training? Did they enter employment? But we want to go a little deeper and collect information about did folks receive a driver's license? Are they experiencing improved mental health outcomes and things of that nature? And I'll point to the RFA document for a full list of some of the milestones we're envisioning, but we will also want to allow grantees to identify their own milestones as part of their application process. So I'm not going to get too in the weeds on this today. There will be more information about this to come to awarded grantees, as well as, again, the RFA, which includes a list of examples of participant milestones.
So jumping into H.I.R.E needs-related payment. So per the AB 178 California Legislature, H.I.R.E's needs-related payments to participants serve a public purpose as they contribute to California's economy and reduce recidivism. And so needs-related payments refer to direct assistance to participants to address basic needs such as housing, food, technological needs, and transportation. Next slide, please, Lisa. Thank you. So approximately 30% of H.I.R.E funds is available for needs-related payment. And for the purpose of this grant, needs-related payments does not refer to stipends provided to participants as cost coverage for participation in workforce programs. Awarded projects may also choose to issue needs-related payments to participants for achieving milestones that advance participants' preparation to enter employment. And the CWDB encourages applicants to use H.I.R.E funds towards needs-related payments in their project design, but it's not a requirement for any project type. So to apply for H.I.R.E, all applications must be submitted electronically through our Cal eGrants website. And I'm going to have Lisa stop sharing our screen, and we'll have Amina from ETP just walk us through an application, filling it out or starting the cover page in Cal eGrants.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amina from ETP. As I introduced myself in the beginning, I'm going to start sharing my screen now. And so I'm just going to first log. So can everyone see the Cal eGrants page? I think so. Okay. I'm going to go ahead first and log in. So if I go home, this is the Cal eGrants homepage. Letting that load. This is what the Cal eGrants homepage looks like. When you go to log into the system, you'll have to log in order to see the application, how to start it. From here, you'll log in. If you are a new user, you'll sign up through this button in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm going to go ahead and type in my credentials. Once you log in, it's going to take you back to that same homepage that you initially saw. But now you'll notice you have more tabs. Once you see these tabs, in order to start your application for the H.I.R.E initiative, you can either click on CWDB or funding opportunities. If you're going through funding opportunities, make sure that you select the correct list view. So you'll notice that it defaults to recently viewed. So just select that drop-down menu, click on CWDB funding opportunities, and then you can pin it so that you always see that list view when you open that. From here, you'll notice there are multiple initiatives, but this is the one that you're looking for, Helping Justice Involved Reenter Employment. Note that it's going to list the application due date, the agency name, the status, and the requested funding available. So it says currently it's accepting applications, so that's how you know that it's still open. Go ahead and click on the funding opportunity title. And then it's going to take you to this page right here. So from here, if you scroll down, you'll find further information, description of funding opportunities, so a bit about what we covered here just now. In order to start your application, you'll click on Apply in the top right-hand corner.
Mrs. Ryan.
Hi, did you have a question?
No.
Okay, so from here, you're going to select your application category. So click on the drop-down menu from here, and then you can select either H.I.R.E program or H.I.R.E technical assistance, depending on what you want to apply for. I'm going to click on the H.I.R.E program just for now. From there, select Next. And then it's going to take you to the cover page. So this is the first step in creating your application. From here, there are the project types we just mentioned. So if you click on this drop-down arrow, this is where you would select either your independent or your network project type. And note this is for the program type. Once you select your project type, you'll then go in, select in your project name, project geography. Depending on what you select, you're going to have different fields.
Yeah, see this
In this information. So go ahead and type in your information. I'm just going to click on text just so that I can quickly go over this. Note that as you're going over the cover page, there are these help bubbles. So if you hover over it, it's going to give you further information on what is being asked for. So for example, program geography means where services will be delivered. As you go down, you'll go into project type cost. You'll put in your requested amount that you have for this. So I'll just put 10,000 for now. Note these red asterisks. That means those are required fields. Scrolling down, you have where you'll enter your location, your points of contact, and then your approval of authorized representatives. After you go through all that, you'll click Save, and then that will generate your application. So for this portion of our walkthrough, we were just going to go through the cover page, so I'll hand it back to our CWDB staff. Thank you.
Thanks, Amina. And so there is a video that Amina provided for us that's available on the H.I.R.E website. And it's the Cali Grants application tutorial video. So I encourage folks to check that video out. Provides just an in-depth overview of walking through an application. So as she mentioned, there's H.I.R.E program and H.I.R.E technical assistance are the categories when applying. If you're applying as a technical assistant, you would just apply as technical assistance and complete and submit an application. If you're applying as an independent, you would check H.I.R.E program and then complete and submit an application. And if you're applying as a network, hub, or spoke, the hub would have to start the application and create a project name on behalf of the project, share that with its spoke applicants after it saves its application and is in a submitted in progress status. Then spokes will go in and create their own applications and link to the hub by the project's name. So we encourage applicants to choose a unique name to distinguish amongst applicants. And then we can kick it over to Mike for our H.I.R.E award process.
Thanks, Shani, and thanks, Amina. And just in response to some of the questions in the chat, we will be posting this morning's webinar to our webpage, which I just linked in the chat. And Amina was gracious enough to record a more comprehensive walkthrough of the full application that's also available on that webpage. So how is this money going to be awarded? That's a question I'm sure many folks on this call have. So what we want to do now is give a little background on what our process at the state is going to be for determining award amounts and factors we will be considering as we review H.I.R.E applications. So I will pass it to Monique to speak a little more about the scoring criteria that we will be using.
Thank you, Mike. So per the legislation, applications will be reviewed for comprehensive responses, organization size, number of participants, and their capacity for completion. Priority consideration is going to be given to programs that place graduates into unionized jobs, are currently serving the reentry population, and provide wraparound services. Oh, you can skip to the, I just covered this slide. I'm a little bit behind. Sorry, Julissa. So our scoring criteria. This is a copy of the rubrics that will be used to evaluate H.I.R.E. So on the top, we have our criteria for hubs. As you can see, there's, seems to be numbered here, but there's 6 major buckets of categories. And then for spokes and independent projects, they will be using the same rubric for scoring. And with that said, I believe I will be passing it over to Cheney to talk about our grant timeline.
Thanks, Monique. So this is just an overview of the grant timeline for H.I.R.E. The contract process will begin with the CWD program staff contacting awarded organizations to make edits to their application exhibits. Grantees are expected to respond and make requested edits promptly. And then once those are made, the CWDB will submit relevant documentation to EDD for contract processing. This process includes several steps in which EDD collects, reviews, and approves submitted contract documentation. At the conclusion of this process, the completed contract package will be sent to the awarded organization for signature. Upon receipt of those required signatures, the contract will be executed and program activities can begin. So we have an estimate for an award announcement of September 2023. Our contracting process is 4 to 6 months. And an estimated program start date is early 2024, and our grant term for this is 12 months. So we do recommend folks use an April 1, 2024 start date for their work plans. Thank you. And then the CWDB strongly encourages prospective applicants to utilize the following H.I.R.E. resources for the solicitation or during the solicitation period. So we have a prospective applicant survey, and I'll have Lisa jump in and talk a little bit more about that shortly. Our Q&A, and there are several H.I.R.E. links in addition to key dates that we want to point you in the direction of. So with that, Lisa, you can jump into the survey.
Thank you, Cheney. Oh, we're going the wrong way. There we go. All right, so we have the prospective applicant survey, which many of you have been a part of or have responded to. And what it does is it's designed to gather information about organizational sizes, capacities, what types of services that they plan to provide or already provide. And it's a way for, and it is open to all of you. You are able to request it through the solicitations inbox. If you just shoot us an email, we can go ahead and get that over to you. And it's a filtered spreadsheet. So you are able to find the people that are in your geographic area, or if there is a certain partnership that you want to establish because they offer specific services, then it's a really good way to kind of connect with those people and just spread our reach throughout the state. Oh, sorry about that, guys. So like I mentioned before, you are able to request the results of the survey through the solicitations at cwdb.ca.gov. And then you can also use the link here on the H.I.R.E. webpage to respond to if you haven't done so already, and respond to the survey. So that way your information can also be added and shared with other networks that are interested in creating a bigger network as part of either the Hub 1, 2, or 3 models. And let's see who's next. Cheney. I'll pass it over to Cheney.
Awesome. So as a resource that we mentioned, our H.I.R.E. weekly Q&A will be posted on the webpage beginning May 26th. So this Friday, questions must be received each Tuesday by 2 p.m. to be included in that Friday's weekly posting. And then questions received after 2 p.m. on Tuesdays will be included in the following weeks. The last Q&A posting will be Friday, July 7th, and questions must be received by Monday, July 3rd to receive an answer. Questions submitted after the deadline will not be included or answered in the Q&A. And then as mentioned, we encourage anyone to submit any questions to the solicitations at cwdb.ca.gov and include H.I.R.E question in the subject line. And then here are some resources, our H.I.R.E webpage. We encourage folks to look at that often, as we'll be updating that with links to any future sessions, including our office hour sessions. The RFA is really going to be the guiding source that provides the technical and comprehensive overview of the H.I.R.E grant and its requirements. The application guide is coming soon. It's a comprehensive guide that with detailed instructions for completing each section of the application. And then the application video, we put that in the chat, but that is a walkthrough of the application, our prospective applicant survey, and then just reiterating sending any questions to our solicitations inbox. Next slide, please. So here's an overview of key dates for H.I.R.E. So the RFA was released on the 15th of this month, our application webinar today. We have two webinars coming up for the hub and spoke. We also encourage spokes to attend our independent webinar on, we also encourage independent applicants to attend our spoke webinar on June 7th. We have a WorkCon session on May 31st, and we'll have office hours June 15th and the 29th. And that's really open to anyone to come in and ask us any questions. If they're experiencing any issues, we just recommend that you include any screenshots as you're sending any issues along with us to help us assist. And applications are due on July 10th. And with that, we'll jump into our Q&A. So just to preview, all questions today will be included in our June 2nd Q&A posting.
Thanks, Janie. And Julissa, you could pull the screen share down. Today's session, the slides will be available. If anyone's interested in these, you can send an email to the solicitations@cwdb.ca.gov email, and we can send you the slide deck. We'll also be posting this recording on our H.I.R.E webpage. And with that, we will open it up to questions. As Janie mentioned, what we can do today is respond to questions that we're already covering in the RFA. We have a Q&A process, which Janie laid out. So any questions that are sort of policy clarifications or very specific, we may have to punt those to the Q&A. But for this morning's meeting, if anyone has questions, if you could go ahead and use the hand raise function in Zoom, we'll just sort of call on folks as they raise their hand. So it looks like Shadiqua Smith, first in the queue.
Yes, good morning. And I apologize for not being on camera, but my camera is not working this morning. So I have, I guess, two clarification questions about the hub model. So in terms of identifying employment partners, do they have to be pre-identified in the application process? And if so, how many do we have to have in that application?
Yeah, good question. So the spokes will also have to complete an application as well in the CalPE grant system. So they will need to be pre-identified because the hub application will basically be rolling up all the information from the spoke applicants and submitted as part of that full application package. So you'll need the budget information from the partner organizations or the spokes to determine what your full project budget is going to be. Because the hubs they are eligible for that 10% bonus on top of their own program. So for example, if you have 4 spoke organizations as part of your application and their total request totals up to say $1 million, the hub will be eligible to receive 100,000, so 10% of that million, to conduct all the sort of additional functions that the hub is responsible for.
And I just wanted to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. I'm talking about employers who have agreed to hire people.
I see.
Not
okay.
Community-based organizations that will provide services.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it would definitely be beneficial to be able to identify the employer partners as part of the application. That would help us at the state board sort of make some award determinations. But of course, we do have July 10th as our application deadline. So some of those employer partnerships may not be established by July 10th, but the extent to which you could provide detail on how the employer engagement process will work or identify potential employer partners, I think would really benefit an application.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go to Suzanne Willis next.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I work for a public defender's office, and some of the work that we're doing is working with soon to be released, either paroled or released individuals to get them set up with the services that they need. So do they need driver's license? Do they need SNAP benefits? All of that kind of stuff. This is work above and beyond what the lawyers are doing and we are partnering with some other organizations. So in the outline you had, it looked like hubs needed to be a nonprofit, some kind of 501c3. We're a government agency. So would we be able to, either apply for maybe technical assistance around this or be a hub with our nonprofit partners as the spokes?
That's a good question. And that's one I don't want to definitively answer now because I think it may depend a little on the specifics, but I will just kind of reference the requirement for all applicants to have a local government partner. And that seems like it would be a great fit for either an independent or a network to partner with an organization that is providing pre-release services. If you want to send us an email with a little more specifics on that, we can certainly make an attempt at providing a little more context for you.
Excellent. Should I send it to the solicitations at CWDB?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The team is ready to answer any of anyone's questions. We're on standby. So
Excellent.
feel free to
Thanks.
feed us as complicated of a question as you'd like to ask, and we'll take a stab at it. All right. Veronica Baker, you're next in the queue.
Okay. How you guys all doing? My name is Alex. I'm here with Veronica. Sorry. Quick question, Mike, for you. In your presentation, you guys were showing the hubs, the scoring mechanism you were going to use for the hubs and I think it's the hub and spoke model. The independent model, did you show the scoring sheet for that? And is partnerships, not that that's what we anticipate or plan to submit? Will we be held or will we lose points for not submitting as a hub or as a network entity?
Yeah, so the independent rubric is going to look identical to the spoke rubric. Okay. So those partnerships with the local government and the local workforce development board are a requirement for any application. So if you're applying independently, the organization will need to have those partnership agreements with the local government and local workforce board.
Yeah, definitely. I just feel we just don't have the capacity to necessarily operate as a hub quite yet, but maybe in the near future. And just wanted to make sure that if we do apply independently, you still have to have partnerships. And as you're saying, you have to be a part of your local workforce board and your local government. So definitely, thank you. Thank you for your answer.
Yeah, and that's a great point too. And that's kind of one of our, that's part of the thrust behind the network model is we realize that some of the requirements, both like on the back end with grant management and reporting, as well as some of the front end partnership building, may be a little bit of a tougher lift for some smaller grassroots organizations, which is why we wanted to have this hub and spoke model for organizations to reach out and connect to a hub that may have a little more capacity to do that work. And as Julissa covered, we do have our interested applicant survey where we do have a database of organizations that have already provided information about kind of what their capacity is, that may be a good fit for organizations that are looking to connect to a larger organization with that capacity. So
yeah, no, I love the model. It's great. I'm sure we'll get it together. It's just you know how it is. The first year around, you kind of feel like, can we actually get all the pieces in place? And I don't know. We're trying. But thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. Holly, you're next in the queue.
Hi, thank you. So I believe I heard you say that a public education agency is an eligible applicant, and I just wanted to make sure that I heard that correctly.
Yeah, I think again, we'd need a little more specifics on the individual applicant. I think the point of today's call isn't to necessarily determine eligibility. We do have some comprehensive information in the RFA that does lay out the organization types that are eligible to serve as applicants. We could drop that in the chat if Cheney or Monique, if one of you all could find that page number in the RFA where we discuss applicant eligibility, that'd be helpful.
I do have that. And it sounds like it's community-based organizations and nonprofits, but maybe I did post the question into the, I sent an email because that would be just super helpful to have an answer about that, to not spend time thinking about it if it's actually not possible. So I did think I heard that earlier today, but perhaps I was mistaken. So I guess I should just wait until the FAQ comes out on Friday, or is there more information? So for example, we are a county office of education. That's the specific public education agency.
Yeah, I think we'd prefer to cover that in the Q&A than on today's call, so we can just kind of look at the details on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Holly. Let's see, Terrell, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong.
Terrell. Good morning, Mike. I have a question. LA County, we have multiple offices in different regions down in Southern California, and we do have the capacity to accompany multiple spokes. So my question is, will we be able to have multiple hubs to accompany the spokes that we have?
Yeah, and that's a great question that we received a few times during the stakeholder engagement process. We did get a question in the chat earlier. I'm trying to find that. But I believe it's on page 7 of the RFA. We do have some language around organizations that do have multiple locations and their eligibility to take part in multiple network applications. So we lay out the criteria for how that would take place. So short answer, it depends on the specifics, but longer answer, likely yes, if organizations do meet the thresholds that are laid out on page 7 of the RFA. And I'll post that in the chat here.
All right, thank you.
All right, Mira, next in the queue.
Hi. Do you have any details on the types of data you think will be expected in terms of reporting?
That's a great question. The reporting stuff, we tend to wait till later in the process. We generally will release a reporting guide to awarded applicants. I don't know if Travis Baker is on the call right now, but our evaluation team handles a lot of that information. But short answer is, right now we don't have a ton of specifics, but awarded grantees will receive guidance on that later on in the process. All right, and then last two, we'll go to Tom and then Ryan, and then we'll wrap up for today. So Tom, go ahead.
Thank you. My question is about an organization that might want to be a hub that covers multiple counties. And if we do that, how would we decide which workforce board and which local government would be involved? Would we have multiples, or would we have one and then work with the primary? How would that work?
So AB 178 does specify that the local board and local government requirements do apply to any jurisdiction where services will be taking place. So that is the threshold. So if organizations applying in multiple counties should have those partnerships in the areas that they are operating programming.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll go to Ryan and then Travion. You got in before the 11 a.m. Deadline, so we'll get to you too. Ryan, go ahead.
Hi, Mike. Just wondering what you mean by demonstrating relationships with employers that hire individuals with criminal records, like how you would like applicants to demonstrate that relationship in the application.
Yeah, that's a good question. That was another one of those requirements that comes directly from the legislation. We don't, at this point, have any more guidance specific to that. So there's a little bit of flexibility on the applicant side to sort of illustrate those that capacity as they see fit. We don't want to be overly prescriptive for how you all demonstrate that.
Okay. And then do I have time to ask a second question, or should we move on to Travion?
Yeah, you could throw one more in.
Okay. So for collecting data and metrics, I know you just talked about how that's not like fully fleshed out yet, but I saw in the application or in the RFP, there's Appendix A, which has all the milestones. And then you also have the WIOA outcomes. Are we going to have to collect information on both, or one or the other?
Good question. That's still to be determined. We're working with our eval team to kind of firm that up a little bit, but right now we're just going to provide the general guidance, and then as we get into the award process, we will be providing more detail on that.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And then last but not least, Travion.
Everyone, good morning, Mike. First, I want to say this is a great thing that you guys are doing for California. I believe if we really play this right, it's going to change everything in California, starting like right now. So I want to commend everybody that put in all this hard work for us to obtain this grant. Just want to make that clear. I just have 3 questions. One is, as far as CBOs that have the capacity throughout the region of California or in certain counties, for the spokes, how many hubs can a big hub have as a spoke? So if we want to get all 9 spokes to be hubs and we have the capacity to do that, can we do that? What would be the barrier for that is my first question.
So we laid out the thresholds early in the presentation, and again, this will be posted, and it's in the RFA as well.
Okay.
The number of spokes is contingent on the annual operating budget of the hub organization. So there's 3 different size thresholds. Or large organizations with an annual operating budget 10 million or greater can take on up to 9 spokes, and then the number of spokes goes down based on the thresholds for the hub organization size.
Okay. And then my next question would be in terms of training and upscale for employment enterprise. So at our company, we live off of billing insurances. This is a program where we're trying to create a pipeline for people reentering out of like prison, federal prison, like we have the juvenile halls here. But in terms of salary for employees, is there a budget or is there a conversation? Because what happens is when you, a company as the one I work for and many others, when you build off insurances, when they leave our treatment centers and go on with their life sober to get housing coming from prison, we don't have that budget for supportive services. So what we do is we refer them out to a lot of coexisting reentry services that we have. But to hire people, is there a budget for customized training for people like myself, people like Terrell, who are just as impacted, that's trying to get in manager positions right now and try to show big companies that bill insurances, look, we're the people that can really get the grassroots together to really get the employment workforce going?
That's a great question. Short answer, in the RFA, there's a 20% admin cap. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's for administration of the grant. That goes to the salaries of the folks that are working on administering the grant for the awarded grantees. I think a little more context on that. If you want to send us an email, we could kind of get in the weeds on that question. But short answer is that there's that admin cap. There's a little guidance on staff salaries in the RFA. But if you want to ask us in more specific terms, feel free to send an email to that solicitations inbox, and we can try to address that question.
Last one, Mike. This is the last one.
Sure.
So for the hub, because I want to make sure, I've been following this since day one, and it's a little vague. I know we went from 3 years to 12 months now. So that was a big change because we already had everything coordinated. One of the things I wanted to ask you was, I lost my train of thought. I'm gonna have to send it to you in the email. I'm so nervous.
Yeah, the suspense.
I'm nervous right now, man. Okay, but no, thank you. No, here it was. So for the hubs, that's a big hub as an agency. Is there a separate budget if we collaborate with somebody for our evaluation and for our technical assistance, or do we have to? Is that included into our 750 budget?
So the state, we at the Workforce Board have a budget for statewide eval and statewide TA. So we're hoping that, awarded grantees will be able to leverage the capacity of the evaluator and the TA provider that is awarded through this funding. Totally optional if individual organizations want to operate that, but that wouldn't be a separate bucket of funding for individual grantees.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks Travion for the questions, and thanks to everyone for attending today. Again, I just want to give another plug for our webpage. It's linked in the chat. We're going to continue to update that. Registration links for the upcoming webinars will be available there in the coming days and weeks. The RFA is there. Our application guide will be posted later this week. So all the resources folks need to apply will be available there. Solicitations at cwdb.ca.gov is your go-to for any other questions. Q&A will be posted every Friday throughout the open grant term. And we really appreciate your attendance, and we really look forward to seeing the applications you all submit. So thank you all for attending, and hope to hear from you all soon.